crazy laugh of where there was just pure happiness shown on her face.
I tried, but there was nothing there. I was numb. Part of, she would never do this to us, but also part of maybe this is all.
Guys, the royal hurricane everyone has been watching brew on the horizon finally made landfall, and it hit with catastrophic force. The city of New York was meticulously engineered to be Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's grand, triumphant comeback moment. You can practically feel the intended vibe, can't you? The perfectly coordinated designer outfits, the camera-ready smiles polished to a high sheen, that entire "we're thriving" energy they are so incredibly fond of projecting to the world. But what the relentless flash of the cameras actually managed to capture was something far more revealing, a complete and unmitigated disaster unfolding in excruciating real time. She made her grand entrance dripping in custom Armani and adorned with diamonds valued at more than most people's houses, glowing with an almost theatrical radiance for every single photographer in her line of sight. And him, well, he looked as though he would rather be literally anywhere else on the entire planet. His face was a mask of tension, his jaw visibly clenched, his smile a brittle formality that barely managed to make it past his teeth. It was a stark, unnerving contrast that no amount of PR spin could possibly conceal. Onlookers and witnesses at the event couldn't stop talking about the palpable, almost suffocating tension you could slice through with a knife. It hung in the air between them like a physical presence. But here is the part of the story that absolutely nobody expected. By the end of the night, in a move that sent shockwaves through the royal watching community, they left the event separately. For two people who, for years, had done absolutely everything together, who had built their entire global brand on the foundation of being this unbreakable, united team against the world, that single act was the first massive, undeniable red flag that something was seriously and perhaps irrevocably broken. What was masterfully orchestrated to be their triumphant return to the public stage instead morphed into a chilling preview of what is really happening behind the opulent, carefully guarded closed doors of their Montecito mansion. Before we delve into the real, unvarnished story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because what I am about to reveal is going to completely blow your mind. And please, drop a like on this video if you're ready to see what's truly going on behind the curtain. Now, let's dive right in. To genuinely and fully understand how they got to that train wreck of a night in New York, you've got to rewind the clock a little bit. The city of Paris, that's where the real, profound damage truly started. And honestly, it's the place where everything began to irrevocably fall apart. Now, Prince Harry's relationship with Paris isn't just complicated. It is a deeply and painfully personal wound. His mother, Princess Diana, died there. For decades after that horrific night, he steadfastly refused to even step foot in that city. The trauma runs that deep, a raw and festering psychological injury that has never properly healed. The memories, the relentless, blinding flashes of the cameras that never stopped chasing her, the dark and ominous tunnel, all of it has haunted him in ways that most people can't even begin to imagine. It's not just a city on a map to him. It is the very place where his entire world shattered into a million pieces when he was just a vulnerable, grieving kid. The city itself is a ghost. Oh, guys, you had better grab your tea and settle in, because Meghan Markle is reportedly at a full, rolling boil. Not just simmering, not merely warm, we are talking about a full-blown, furious boil. So, when Meghan suddenly announced out of the blue that she was jetting off to Paris, completely alone, for what she vaguely described as a business trip, people close to Harry say he was already feeling deeply uneasy about the whole thing. He didn't try to stop her, and he certainly didn't make a public scene about it, but the undercurrent of anxiety was undeniably there. Friends mentioned that he was unusually quiet in the days leading up to her trip, noticeably withdrawn in a way that those around him couldn't help but notice. And then she went. Soon after her arrival, the photos started appearing online. There was Meghan in Paris, living her absolute best life, attending exclusive events, soaking up the adoration and attention like a flower turning towards the sun. On the surface, from a distance, it all looked professional enough. Just another day at the office for the Duchess. You probably think you've heard every single Meghan Markle story there is to hear, right? The dramatic royal exit, the blockbuster Netflix deal, the podcast that seemed to vanish into thin air. You'd be forgiven for thinking this was just another work obligation, another box to be ticked on her career checklist. Wrong. This is precisely where the story gets absolutely wild. Meghan didn't just go to Paris for a few high-level meetings and some polished photo ops around the prettier, more tourist-friendly parts of the city. In a move that still boggles the mind, she filmed content directly near the Pont de l'Alma tunnel. Yes, that tunnel. The exact, precise spot where Diana's car crashed, the very location where everything ended on that tragic night in 1997. We're not talking about somewhere vaguely nearby or a landmark that was accidentally in the background of a shot. We are talking about that specific, hallowed ground, the place that represents the absolute epicenter of Harry's darkest, most persistent nightmare. When Harry eventually found out and actually saw the footage she had posted online for the world to see, Meghan Markle was about to be humbled in a way no one saw coming. At the Fortune Most Powerful Women's Summit in Washington, she was all smiles, but back home, the emotional fallout was nuclear. Friends say he didn't just get upset, he completely and utterly broke down. Those who know him well described his reaction as nothing short of utterly devastating, like someone had viciously ripped open a deep wound that had never properly healed in the first place. The profound betrayal he felt wasn't just about the physical location itself, it was about what that location symbolized. She knew. Of course, she knew. Anyone who has spent even 5 minutes around Prince Harry knows what Paris means to him, what that tunnel symbolizes, and just how deeply that trauma still affects him all these years later. One person very close to the situation didn't mince words. She knew exactly what that place meant to him. There is no way she didn't. Listen, let me tell you what really went down in Paris, because this is crucial. This was supposed to be Meghan Markle's big comeback moment, her declaration to the world. Nothing Meghan does lacks intention. She is meticulously calculated about everything, from the designer she wears to the places she goes. This wasn't some accidental oversight or a thoughtless gaffe. The implication hung heavy and unspoken in the air that this was a choice, a deliberate, conscious decision to film there despite knowing the immense emotional weight and historical pain it carried for her own husband. Now, let's examine Meghan's response to all the ensuing backlash. She brushed the entire thing off as if it was no big deal at all, telling people it was just work-related content, that she was simply capturing the city for her projects, and that everyone was overreacting and being far too sensitive. It was, in her telling, just another day of creating material for her brand. Nothing more to it than that. She reportedly acted completely confused about why people were even making it into such a big deal. But here is what Harry saw: the city that has literally haunted his nightmares for decades, the place where his mother spent her final terrified moments being relentlessly chased by aggressive photographers, suddenly and casually becoming a picturesque backdrop for his wife's content creation and personal brand building. It wasn't just tone deaf, it felt like a complete and total disregard for the one emotional boundary he thought would never, ever need to be stated out loud. For Harry, this wasn't a simple misunderstanding or a cultural difference or even a public relations misstep. This was a profound betrayal wrapped up in a glossy social media post. This was his deepest trauma being actively used as scenery for her ambition. And in that moment, something fundamental inside him, something core to how he saw their relationship and their partnership, just snapped. From that exact moment onward, people within their inner circles started picking up on something distinctly different between them. The easy, natural warmth that used to be there whenever they looked at each other was suddenly gone, replaced by a cool distance. The easy affection, the inside jokes, the almost telepathic way they used to finish each other's sentences, it was all fading and fading fast. The distance growing between them wasn't just expanding in some subtle, gradual way you might expect in a long-term relationship. It was becoming this massive, obvious chasm that neither of them seemed remotely interested in trying to bridge. Friends who had seen them together before the Paris trip and then again immediately after noticed the shift instantly. It was like watching two people who used to orbit around each other like planets suddenly moving in completely opposite and conflicting directions. And Paris, that trip, that footage, that tunnel, it became the point of no return that nobody could ignore anymore. And speaking of people who are constantly in the picture, there's someone else who needs to be talked about. What you're about to see is a prime example of a textbook narcissist, and this time, she is absolutely seething with anger. I'm talking about Marcus Anderson. Now, before your mind goes where it usually does with these kinds of scandalous stories, hold on. This isn't that kind of scandal. Well, not exactly, but his constant and pervasive presence in Meghan's life is absolutely undeniable, and it has become a massive point of tension in their marriage. If you've followed Meghan for any length of time, you know Marcus. He's stylish, charming, and connected to absolutely everyone who matters in the worlds of media, fashion, and entertainment. And here's the thing that's simply impossible to ignore. He is always there. Like, always. We're talking about brunch dates in Toronto back during her Suits days and intimate Montecito dinner parties at their house. Hold on to your teacups, guys. This one is hot and ready to spill. Let me tell you exactly what happened in New York. The cameras were there for red carpet appearances where he's right there in the background, or sometimes, even front and center alongside her. He's like her personal good luck charm, except he never, ever goes away. One person inside their circle put it pretty bluntly, he's always around. It's honestly like there are three people in that marriage: Harry, Meghan, and Marcus. That's not just casual shade being thrown around for effect. That's a direct observation from someone who has actually been in rooms with all three of them and watched the unsettling dynamic play out repeatedly. And here's what makes Marcus more than just a close friend who is always hanging around. He's not just connected, he is seriously, powerfully connected. He is a gatekeeper to the Soho House crowd, the LA elite scene, the powerful brokers who can open doors faster than any royal title ever could in that town. These are the people who run entire industries, who make and break careers with a single phone call, who control access to the exclusive rooms most people will never even know exist. And Marcus, he's got the keys to all of those rooms. Meghan's fierce loyalty to him isn't just about friendship or emotional support, though that's definitely part of it. It's deeply strategic. He is her bridge to a world of power and influence she desperately wants to be a part of, a world she has been meticulously building towards since way before Harry ever came into the picture. He introduces her to the right people at the right time, gets her into the right high-profile events, and whispers the right advice in her ear about who to align with and who to avoid. In many ways, he's been more instrumental in building her current life in California than almost anyone else, and she knows it. Which is exactly why she keeps him so incredibly close, why he's present at every major moment, and why his opinion seems to matter so much in decisions that theoretically should be between her and her husband. Meanwhile, Prince Harry is reportedly completely over it. Friends who know him well say he feels like a guest in his own relationship, an accessory to his wife's ambitions. It's like he's watching his wife build this whole new world where he doesn't quite fit and isn't really needed. It's not that Marcus is rude to him or that there's open hostility. It's something far more subtle and insidious than that. It's more about who Meghan lights up around and who she seems to barely notice. At events and private gatherings, when Meghan is deep in animated conversation with Marcus and the rest of her Hollywood inner circle, she is electric, vibrant, laughing, and fully engaged, looking like she's exactly where she belongs. And Harry, he just fades into the wallpaper, standing awkwardly off to the side with a drink he isn't really drinking, endlessly checking his phone. Oh, buckle up because this is the royal explosion everyone's been whispering about, the one the palace never saw coming. He looks like he's counting down the minutes until he can make his escape. The dynamic has shifted so dramatically from what it used to be. He was supposed to be her partner, her equal, the person she was building this new life with side by side. Now he's effectively her plus one, the guy who shows up to events because he's supposed to, who stands next to her in photos because that's what's expected, but who clearly isn't part of the inner circle anymore. Those who've watched them at parties and dinners describe it as genuinely painful to witness. This man who gave up everything for her, who walked away from his entire family and the only life he'd ever known, now feeling like a complete and total outsider in the life they are supposedly sharing. And Marcus, whether he means to or not, represents everything about Meghan's new world that Harry can't stand and can't possibly compete with. The constant networking, the strategic friendships, the always-on performance of connection and influence, it's all anathema to him. Harry wanted peace and privacy. Meghan wanted Marcus and everything he represents, access, power, and relevance. And that ever-widening gap between what they each need, it's not getting any smaller. Watch them at any red carpet event, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Every celebrity couple performs a little bit for the cameras, right? That's just part of the game when you're famous. But Harry and Meghan have turned that performance into a full-blown, uncomfortable art form, and honestly, it's cringeworthy to watch once you notice what's really happening beneath the surface. She steps onto that carpet, and it's like someone flipped a switch inside her. She becomes electric, posing at every conceivable angle, working the photographers like she was born for this exact moment. The smile never wavers, the energy never dips. She's drinking in every single second of that intense attention, like it's the only thing keeping her alive. And Harry? He's a completely different person standing right next to her. He's stiff, uncomfortable, looking like every single muscle in his body is tense and ready to flee. His eyes are constantly moving, scanning the crowd, checking the exits like he's a trapped animal looking for any possible escape route. You can actually see him flinch sometimes when the camera flashes go off in a sudden burst. And if you know anything about his history, you know exactly why. Those flashes, that chaos of photographers all screaming and pushing to get closer, it's the exact same nightmarish energy that surrounded his mother during her final, terrifying moments. That trauma doesn't just go away because you're at a fancy event, it's always there. Lurking right under the surface, making every single photo op feel like a torturous reliving of a nightmare. But Meghan, she can't seem to get enough of it. The brighter the lights, the louder the crowd, the more cameras pointed directly at her. That's when she's most alive. It's like the spotlight isn't just something she tolerates, it's something she needs on a fundamental, cellular level. Those who have been around them at these events say the contrast is shocking once you really pay attention. She's glowing and energized, fully in her element, thriving on the energy. He looks like he's barely holding it together, counting down the seconds until they can leave. There's this viral clip that went around from one of their appearances, and if you haven't seen it, you need to look it up because it says everything you need to know. Harry reaches out to touch her hand, just this small, almost desperate gesture of connection, probably trying to ground himself or feel some kind of support from his wife in the middle of all that chaos. And what does she do? She subtly, but unmistakably, pulls away. Not in an obvious, dramatic way that would make headlines, but just enough that his hand ends up grabbing at empty air instead of finding hers. And then, without missing a single beat, she flashes that trademark million-dollar smile directly at the cameras, totally focused on the photographers, as if he isn't even there. The whole heartbreaking interaction lasts maybe 3 seconds, but people who analyze body language had an absolute field day with it. Someone who's been around them at multiple events didn't hold back their assessment. She's in love with the camera, not the man beside her. You can see it in how she lights up when the attention's on her versus how she barely acknowledges him unless it's for a photo. That's brutal, but it tracks perfectly with what so many people have noticed. Those in their circle describe the dynamic pretty bluntly. Harry genuinely hates the circus. It makes him physically anxious and emotionally drained. The fame, the constant performance, the never-ending stream of public appearances where he has to smile and pretend everything's perfect, it's torture for him. But Meghan, she needs it like oxygen. It's not just that she enjoys it or tolerates it as part of the job. It's that without the spotlight, without the cameras and the attention and the public validation, something inside her seems to dim. The lights, the designer dresses, the endless applause and recognition, that's what fuels her. And every single time she drags him into another red carpet moment, another photo op, another event where he has to perform for crowds that make his skin crawl, he breathes a little less freely. You can literally watch him shrink next to her as she expands to fill the space. They're playing two completely different games here, and neither one seems willing or able to adjust to what the other needs. Meghan is playing for relevance, for maintaining and growing her public profile, for staying in the conversation and on people's minds. Harry is playing for peace, for some semblance of the quiet, private life he thought they were building together. And here's the cruel, inescapable irony. The more she chases the camera and the spotlight and the fame, the more invisible he becomes standing right next to her. He's fading in real time, turning into background noise in her own story. And everyone watching can see it happening except maybe the two of them. Or maybe they do see it, and that's an even more tragic thought. Remember when they first announced they were leaving? The whole narrative was about freedom, sunshine, independence, and privacy. They were going to escape the rigid constraints of royal life and finally just be themselves, away from all the rules and expectations and constant scrutiny. It sounded beautiful, honestly. A fresh start in California, building a life on their own terms without anyone telling them what to do or how to live. That was the dream they sold to everyone, including, most likely, themselves. But fast forward to now, and it looks less like liberation and more like they just traded one gilded cage for another, except this one's got better weather and a lot more palm trees. When Harry and Meghan packed up everything and moved to Montecito, the promise was simple. They'd live quietly, raise their kids in peace, maybe support a few meaningful causes without all the royal protocol and media circus attached. Just a normal life, or as normal as life can be for two of the most famous people on the planet. That's what Harry thought was happening, at least. That's the vision he had in his head when he agreed to leave everything and everyone he had ever known behind. But Meghan, she had completely different plans. Big, ambitious plans. We're talking brand deals that would make your head spin, global speaking tours, a whole Netflix empire they were going to build together, product lines, strategic partnerships, the works. Friends who know them well say the difference in expectations was obvious from pretty early on. One person close to the couple put it like this: they left one palace and built another. Only this one has cameras, contracts, and PR teams running everything instead of royal courtiers. That's not the peaceful, private life Harry thought he was signing up for. That's just a different version of the same performance, except now there's no centuries-old institution backing it up. It's all on them to keep the machine running. They didn't escape the spotlight like they claimed they wanted to. They reinvented it. They rebranded it. They made it their own thing, sure, but it's still the same constant visibility, the same insatiable need to stay relevant, the same crushing pressure to keep people interested and talking. Only this time, Meghan's the one calling all the shots. She's holding the crown now, making the decisions about what events they attend, what projects they take on, how they present themselves to the world. And Harry, he's just trying to figure out how the quiet life he was promised turned into this endless, exhausting cycle of content creation and public appearances and strategic partnerships. People around them say the disconnect between what each of them wanted from California has become absolutely impossible to ignore. Harry genuinely thought they'd disappear into a more private existence, popping up occasionally for charity work they cared about, but mostly just being a normal family doing normal things. Meghan, on the other hand, saw California as a launching pad, a place where she could build her own empire without the royal family's rules holding her back, where she could leverage everything she'd learned and all the attention she'd gained into something that was entirely hers. Neither vision is wrong, exactly, but they're completely and utterly incompatible with each other. Those who've watched this play out say it's created this weird, tense dynamic where they're technically living the life they chose, but neither of them seems particularly happy with how it's turned out. Harry looks like someone who made a massive, life-altering sacrifice expecting one outcome and got something totally different. Meghan looks like someone who's working twice as hard as she ever did before just to maintain the relevance and platform she fought so hard to keep. The freedom they talked about, it's nowhere to be found. If anything, they're more trapped now than they ever were before. Except now, they can't blame the institution or the family or the system. This is the life they built themselves, and that makes it so much harder to admit that it's not working. So let's talk about that Humanitarian of the Year award, because honestly, the gloss on that trophy faded real fast. When Harry and Meghan accepted the award at that glittering New York gala, the internet didn't exactly explode with praise. Instead, people started asking some very uncomfortable questions, like, humanitarian of what exactly? Their foundation, Archwell, was supposed to be this big deal, uplifting communities, fighting online harm, making real, tangible change. That was the pitch, anyway. But for people who've actually looked into what they're doing, the picture gets a lot murkier. Insiders whisper that meetings are sparse, the structure is chaotic, and nobody seems clear on the actual purpose beyond issuing beautifully worded press releases. Word around their circle is that the activism has turned into little more than PR theater. One person didn't pull any punches. It's not about helping people, it's about headlines. They buy awards to stay relevant. Even Harry's speech that night raised eyebrows. He went on this whole rant about powerful actors and corporate depravity, talking about how systems exploit people. And okay, fine, those are real issues worth discussing. But here's the thing that made people's jaws drop. He's saying all this while living off of luxury brand deals that would make a Fortune 500 CEO jealous. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. You can't credibly preach about corporate greed when your entire California lifestyle is funded by those exact kinds of partnerships you're supposedly criticizing. And then there's Meghan's approach to the evening. While Harry's giving this serious, weighty speech about humanitarian work, she turned the event into a personal fashion showcase. Custom tailoring that cost more than most people make in 6 months, diamond jewelry that could fund a small charity for an entire year, and staying in a hotel suite that ran nearly $2,000 per night. All of which would be fine, honestly, if they weren't literally there to accept a humanitarian award. The disconnect was absolutely stunning. People at the event couldn't stop talking about the contrast. Here are two people supposedly being honored for charitable efforts, and they showed up looking like they were attending the Met Gala. The whole thing felt less like a recognition of actual impact and more like a high-fashion networking opportunity with an award attached. One observer put it bluntly, it was less humanitarian, more Hollywood. All performance, no substance. What really got under people's skin was the sense that they genuinely believed they deserved this recognition. That their foundation's vague mission statements and handful of public appearances qualified them for the same honor given to people who've spent decades doing actual, on-the-ground humanitarian work. The entitlement, the staggering lack of self-awareness about the optics, it rubbed so many people the wrong way, and it raised this question that keeps coming up over and over again. Is any of this actually about making a difference, or is it all just about maintaining relevance? Because from where most people are sitting, it's looking a whole lot more like the latter. So, what's actually happening behind those Montecito mansion gates when the cameras aren't rolling? Word from people who've been inside that world paints a picture that's equal parts glamorous and profoundly depressing. The couple reportedly lives completely separate lives under the same roof, which is a wild thing to contemplate. They're married, they share a home, they have kids, but emotionally, they might as well be strangers passing each other in a hallway. Meghan spends her time networking constantly. She's on calls with PR teams, planning product launches, strategizing about events and photo ops. It's nonstop business mode, always building and expanding her brand presence. Meanwhile, Harry's off doing the complete opposite. Long, solitary walks around their property, listening to audiobooks, spending quiet time with the kids when there's no content being created. People close to them describe him as someone retreating more and more into himself, trying to find peace in private moments that don't involve performing for anyone. One person who knows them well didn't sugarcoat it. They're not screaming at each other. There are no dramatic fights. They're just disconnected. Completely and totally disconnected. That might actually be worse than fighting, because at least fighting means you still care enough to engage. This is two people who've emotionally checked out but are going through the motions because leaving would be impossibly complicated and financially ruinous. Even their friends have picked up on the emotional frost. Meghan's back to hosting power brunches with LA's elite, producers, executives, and influencers who can help maintain her Hollywood foothold. Harry's rarely seen at those gatherings anymore. When he does show up, People say he looks like he's surviving, not living, just going through the motions, present in body but entirely absent in spirit. The whispers have gotten louder. Some people in their circle claim there have been quiet conversations about a trial separation. Nothing official, nothing they'd announce publicly, but just some space to figure out if this is even worth continuing. But here's the thing, nobody expects a divorce announcement anytime soon. They're too locked into their shared image, too financially dependent on the brand they've built together. Someone who's spent time around them put it bluntly, neither can afford to walk away clean. They've built this whole empire on being Harry and Meghan, the couple who defied everything. If that falls apart publicly, what do they have left individually? It's a brutal calculation, but it makes perfect, cold sense. So for now, they smile when the cameras roll. They show up together when obligated or when it serves their interests. But the second those obligations are met, they retreat into separate corners of that massive house and live completely independent existences. The emotional distance has become the defining characteristic of their relationship, and everyone close enough to see it can't help but wonder how long they can keep this up before something finally breaks. What started as this epic love story that supposedly defied an entire kingdom has morphed into something completely unrecognizable. The fairy tale they sold everyone, the prince who gave up everything for love, the woman who said she'd change the world beside him, it's not that anymore. Now it's exhaustion mixed with resentment, sprinkled with what looks a whole lot like regret from both sides. People who've watched their relationship evolve describe them now as professional roommates. They play their parts convincingly enough, and then the second it's over, they drift back into their completely separate worlds like magnets repelling each other. Here's what makes their situation so brutal. They can't break free. Not from each other, not from the empire they've built, not from the image they've spent years crafting. Someone close to them described it perfectly. They're locked in a golden cage, beautiful and shiny from the outside, but suffocating from within. They're trapped in the brand they created, stuck playing characters in a story they can no longer control. The real tragedy isn't that they fell apart. Couples drift apart. The tragedy is that they can't stop performing. Every smile is rehearsed. Every public moment is staged. Every statement is carefully worded by teams of people whose jobs depend on keeping this illusion alive. They've become prisoners of their own narrative, and there's no clear way out that doesn't destroy everything. So they keep going, keep pretending, keep performing, because what else can they do? When you see their next coordinated photo op, their next carefully crafted statement, their next public appearance where they're smiling and holding hands, just remember what's actually happening behind that image. What you're looking at isn't a marriage anymore. It's a mirage, a story rehearsed so many times that even they probably forget what the truth used to feel like. They set out to escape the crown and find genuine freedom. Instead, they built a throne of their own, and honestly, the cracks are becoming impossible to ignore. The foundation is shaky, the facade is slipping, and everyone can see it happening in real time. They're performing a version of happiness that doesn't match what's actually going on when the cameras stop rolling. The saddest part is they can't admit it's not working without dismantling everything they've sacrificed and built. So, the performance continues, the smiles stay plastered on, and we all keep watching this slow-motion unraveling of what was supposed to be the greatest love story of our generation. As people close to them keep saying, this story is far from over. The next chapter is coming, and something tells me it's going to be the most dramatic one yet. So, what do you think is really happening here? Are they going to stick it out for the brand, or is a split inevitable at this point? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I genuinely want to know what you're seeing that I might have missed. And if this story had you hooked from start to finish, do me a favor, smash that like button and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications, too, because trust me, when the next chapter of this saga drops, you're going to want to be here for it. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.